Hello everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Metagame Monday for the week of May 17th. We are 3 weeks away, count them, 1, 2, 3 weeks away from NYSE. So if you're not excited about it, I don't know what to tell you. As we heard, I think a couple weeks ago, it's likely the last year that it's gonna be organized in the same way. Basically just due to costs, right? Like we're giving up a power 9 for everyone in top 8, so last chance to be part of something that is honestly just historic, and so I'm very excited to be there. I know all of the crew is. To that extent, we also have a qualifier sort of in New Jersey at BeardedDragon. I know for Sunday 24th, I don't think I can go there, but if you are in the area and interested in it, I can vouch for them in terms of like organizing the tournaments and the mood, and like, you know, it's very nice. I think it's 20 playtest cards for vintage. So yeah, if you are on the area and you have time and you're going to go to NYSE, it's a great chance to get some paper reps. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about this week's metagame. It was a little bit of a weird one, and we'll talk about it, but first let's just go over the matchups themselves. So for Thursday, we had Esper Lures getting it over Sphere Shops. Friday, we had Dredge beating Underworld Bridge with Frog. This was me. I have a video coming out, or has already come out, with the commented run for this entire challenge. Then on Saturday, we had a Mono Initiative mirror in the finals, and finally for the Sunday challenge, we had Sphere Shops winning over Raker. So let's move everyone to their respective places, and we'll see how this week went. You come here, you come here, here. Okay, so first things to think about before we start talking about the numbers is that we had actually relatively low attendance this week. Outside of the Thursday challenge, which had I think 42 people, the other 3 challenges had 32, 33, and 32 people, which means that for Saturday and Sunday, I believe there were 5 rounds instead of 6. And for Friday, when I was playing, it was only 33 people. So that means that you are doing 6 rounds and 4 people at 4 and 2 get into the top 8. So that means that a lot more people that are X2 are making it in. And so the top 8 numbers are a little more, are less representative. I also know for a fact, like, a lot of good players were not playing. First because Saturday, we had a NYSE qualifier in New York City, which I attended and got thoroughly smashed. But a lot of very good players like Justin, half of the crew from New York that we usually play in some of the challenges were not there. So a lot of good players just were not playing, including one of the people that got a very interesting list for Sphere Shops, which I'll talk about later. But yeah. Generally, with these low numbers, tends to favor shops, and having spoken to a couple shops players, it does feel like there's a lot of blue messing around decks going on, specifically for flow state. So flow state gives you a lot of incremental value, but if you are being taxed for every one of those and you are being punished for like they're doing too much, this Sphere of Resistance can really pounce on them. We saw an underrepresentation for the first week of Oath, at least in the top 8, but by the numbers, looking at the data that Justin usually posts, they had actually the same number of players registering them. It's just that Sphere really just overrepresented and overconverted. On Friday, I think 4 people were on, like 4 of the top 8s were just shops. Other than that, we see a pretty big return from Mono Initiative after being a little down for the past few weeks. Oath of Druids got a little tuned down, which I was expecting because 5 people on top 8 for multiple weeks in a row was quite unheard of, in my opinion. Things to note: no Jewel, where we had one of the biggest win rates, but this week got thoroughly just like demolished and didn't convert anyone into top 8. A lot more Dredge. 2 of these are from the same person. The one is the winner, and the other I think we were like top 3. So a lot of coming back from Dredge, and all of these increases come a little bit at the cost of the Lurus group. So we only had 2 blue-black frogs and 1 Esper. This list, which one of these is myself, and the other was a carbon copy of the same deck. So both of these are Frog Bridge, not a traditional Drain Gifts or Sean's list with Infernal Contract. We also had a blue-white flow state, kind of like just dirtling blue-white control, which we talked about last week. 1 Jeskai PO, just purely this is Miharu. So 4 commandeers in the sideboard, test of talents, just like classic Japanese nonsense. And then 2 of the PO-less Jeskai PO, like Jeskai control version that Justin Linari got put on the channel. Just basically think of just literally PO, but with flow states and just a couple dudes and for Theolingas to finish the job. And 1 version of Lurus Doomsday. So, again, where does this leave us is a little strange. I think this is just like a big overrepresentation. I'm happy to see shops coming back into the meta. And in that sense, decks that are a little less all-in on the flow states are going to get more rewarded. Or if you have good ways of beating it. So, for example, this deck with 2 or 3 Flame of Norse, I think, and like just a good suite of anti-artifacts for the Breach decks where we have frogs available and also a pivot that I'll talk about briefly. It was an okay matchup. I think I fought it 4 or 5 times in the challenge and I beat it all except for 1. And then also just really like very depressed sort of numbers for frog. So other than this, just like massive eruption, like if you think about how usually Lurus is part of the meta, like this week is less than a third. With this, just like big eruption of workshop decks. I would expect this to get lower as we arrive at NYSE as well as Troll. All of this usually tends to see a lot of numbers because people really like the deck. But I expect to see just a little bit less here and here, probably a couple less shops, and just start migrating over to the Lurus part. A lot of the high rollers really like their combo decks and their blue like power. I think people like Bosch and Roll, Hank, Tony, Justin, all of these people really like going over the top with like a ton of spells and like what's his name? A ton of combo potential. So I expect this to, start settling in this direction for NYSE. I was trying to get the deck list for the qualifier that Kaplan was running. And so if I get that, you will see that at the end of the video. And I will splice it after the fact if I get the deck lists. Talking about flow state, I believe it's week 4 of flow state being here in Vintage. And compared to the last week where we had, I believe, 14 or so decks with flow states, this week we only had 10. But on average, there were 3.7 copies on each deck. And so a lot of them are opting for like the full 4. That being said, these classic frog decks are not playing any. Instead, opting more, this is just the classic shells. Most of these come from the big blue decks, which are playing 4 of them, and also, 2 or 3 of them. And then all of the Lurus combo sort of versions, or just like new control, where you don't have Psychic Frog, you really need to abuse it, except for this and Doomsday Lurus, where we were playing both 4 frogs and 4 flow states. Now, I'm not going to go over the win rates today. Apologies for that. I'm a little tired, so I don't have the brain for mathematics today. So instead, I'm just going to go over a few of the decks. So this was the Lurus Frog Breach deck that was being played. A few people tried it, only one of them converted, and there was one person 9th that made a couple changes that I liked. Again, there's going to be a video either before or after this. I haven't quite decided yet when I'm going to release them, but I go over the entire finals that I went through. And just basic idea here is that you are having some difficulties with the matchups where you get too many things played against you. I was not feeling comfortable just having to fight all the time against the null rods, the shops, what's it called, the prison shops and stuff like that. Like most decks are sort of equipped to fight it, and although you are equipped to fight against them, I was just very tired of having to fight those fights, and so I was trying to see if I could improve the matchups while pivoting out of the gifts and the drain, so being a little bit more fair with like a combo finish and less control, especially because of Squelcher. It has felt just so annoying to have to fight through those cards from PO. This week would have been like slightly different, but also because Sphere Shops is one of your worst matchups. Actually, pivoting into Frog was pretty good for me this week. There's also this cheeky Consultation Thoracle line that you can play, because Consultation is a good tutor with some heavy cost, but generally a instant speed tutor that is not card negative is very powerful. And so having the Thoracle side jukes where you take out the Breach and the Freeze and you bring in the fastest Oracle, as well as being able to play null rods into the Raker and Jewel matchups that we had seen before. This deck needs a lot of work, especially in the mana section. I opted for the basic swamp without thinking about my fetches, so there's only one fetch that gets this swamp, as well as 3 red sources where we only have these 2 spells main deck and 2 Pyroblasts, which honestly may not even be necessary. So this probably needs to just be a Surveillant from Blue Black, etc. I talk more about this in depth on the video, so please watch that if you're interested. Subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified when we release that video. Another deck that was interesting to me was this version from Justin Gennari's. I think it's basically carbon copy, if not with like a couple minor changes. This is the same person twice. I think the only change they made from one to the other was this braid on the sideboard instead of, I believe, one Soul Guide Lantern or something like that. Regardless, it just basically, if you think of the classic PO, like just KPO, you take out the POs and you put in flow states, as well as cut a couple of the bigger mana cards for these wastelands and a little bit more flexibility. So in my opinion, I personally think these Flusters probably can afford to be Spell Pierce. And the reason is that, from my perspective, when you're playing Flusterstorms, you're either playing to beat combo or you're playing to defend your own, right? And so from this position and seeing all of these draw, you're already playing like 7 forces here. I don't think they have one on this, I don't know. But like, generally Pierce works better if your plan is to go on the land denial. So 5 waste effects with Fluster is a little strange for me, especially because I don't know if this deck can reliably beat like Sphere Shops, even with the flames. It's possible, I don't know. Like I would have to play this deck a little bit more. I just found them strange to see the Flusters, because generally if you see 5 wastelands, you are thinking more of Pierce, because despite it being less powerful, quote unquote, on the big fights, if their mana is limited, it has a little bit more application. Anyway, that's just like what I think. I think this deck looks solid. The only issue that I always have with this deck is that they kill extremely slowly. These are your kill conditions plus the Saga. Obviously, for Theolingas is a very powerful card, but it can also be extremely useless in some positions where your opponent is either very likely to get it back or you are just going to have a lot of trouble keeping it. As well as, just generally, I don't really like this type of styles, because in PO, your 4th Theolingas is an actual fireball, whereas here it's just sort of for value and you can replay it once, that's fine. But generally, you don't have a source of incremental card advantage outside of these, all of these cantrips. And I remember watching Justin's video where at times you were just like holding a card and like all of these card advantage, right? You have like, I don't know, a bajillion. All of these quote unquote draw spells, right? They just draw you into more draw. Like you don't have like an actual threat per se. So you're always trying to just keep control of the board until you get this 4 Theolingas. And in my opinion, you just don't go fast enough. My experience with these decks has been just that the clock is too lackluster. I think this type of configurations are gonna get extremely better with Bilbo. The community is a little split on it. I personally think it's just better Dreadhorde Arcanist, and that card is already very powerful, if only limited because of the deck building quote-unquote constrictions that you have to have, and Bilbo just ignores all of that, plus also lets you loop like things like Vaccine Bubble, Solar Lantern, whatever. I don't know, I feel like that card's gonna get cracked, and so when it comes out, you'll definitely see more of these versions pop up. The other deck that I thought was hilarious, I fought this on the channel, and I also met the creator on the NYSE Qualifier, which is just basically this approach of, if you expect everyone to be messing around with flow state and just like casting cards that get you more cards, but without actually committing to the board, let's say, these big snowbally creatures, well, not necessarily big, but like very snowbally. If you haven't seen this Roadkill Rodney, just basically a card where it either is going to give you a lot of staying power when you get a hit in, or if you have a lot of mana, you can just make a bunch of dudes. Death Touch is pretty relevant keyword, especially against, I assume, things like Initiative and Oath. And also this Big Mother Mouser, which just, no need to think more about it, but it's just basically a thing that gets exponentially bigger because it doubles its number of counters every turn, and then when it dies, it just puts as many 1/1s as counters it had. This combined with the Roadkill Rodney, obviously the idea is that you hit with the Rodney, you make a mutagen, you put the mutagen on the Big Mouser, and then when it attacks, it doubles, so each of these is getting +2s. You can get a lot going on with this, and I got killed by the Ballista actually because of these counters going to Ballista. It's actually pretty powerful. A very, very interesting deck, honestly. They were also playing this like Petrified Hamlets, which I still don't think it's that good in Vintage, but I might be mistaken. Especially without Golos, I feel like it's just kind of like strange. But it's here. One card that I know they told me they didn't really like is this Krang, which I have to assume is for like mirror breakers, or for just like things where really having biggest creatures is going to be the most important, so probably like things like Initiative. I don't think that they liked it a lot, so probably you can expect to not see this anymore. But yeah, a very interesting version. Again, just trying to go more of like the aggro shops of old, where we were playing like Ravagers and like Master of the Foundry, I think it was called, something like that, or like even Steel Overseer. I think there was a version a long time ago. So yeah, kind of like going back. Also, sorry, I forgot. I also got by the Phyrexian Revoker. Very interesting and old school card that we don't see much often anymore, and it's cool to see. It's just like, you know, when you met like an old friend and you haven't seen for a while. So yeah, anyway, this is where I'm gonna leave you. If there is a commentary that I was able to make about the NYSE Qualifier with David Kaplan, it's gonna go after this bit. If not, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the video that I'm gonna drop where I run through my challenge all the way to the finals with this deck. And so yeah, that's what you can look forward to. We're also putting together, we're coming close to NYSE, Matt, who got first on the challenge last week with Laura's Doomsday, recorded the commentary from it, so we'll also post that at some point this week. So yeah, that's likely all I have for you today. See you later.